Jim's structured world begins to unravel when subtle cracks appear in his once stable marriage to Monica. As her late-night meetings grow more frequent and their connection fades, Jim embarks on a quiet investigation, unearthing secrets that threaten to dismantle the life they built together.
At 30 years old, Jim is a man defined by structure and determination. A civil engineer at a prestigious consulting firm, his daily life revolves around precision and planning. His success is not just measured by the buildings he's helped design, but by the steady life he's built for himself and his wife, Monica. Jim's colleagues admire his calm demeanor and ability to diffuse tense situations, whether it's managing a tight project deadline or addressing a heated debate at the construction site. He thrives on solving problems, both technical and personal, and is known for his unwavering dependability. Jim is a man of quiet routines. His morning begins at 6 a.m. with a jog through their suburban neighborhood, where he often waves at passing neighbors. After breakfast with Monica, a simple ritual he treasures, he commutes to the city. Jim's days are packed with meetings, site visits, and detailed blueprints, but he always makes time to check in on Monica, sending her a quick text during lunch or calling her on the drive home. In his free time, Jim enjoys fixing things around the house, seeing it as both a hobby and a way to ensure their home remains a sanctuary. He recently spent a weekend assembling a new bookshelf for their shared home office, a project that gave him immense satisfaction. Though he's not one for extravagant hobbies, he does indulge in woodworking, a skill he learned from his late grandfather. The hand-carved photo frame on their mantelpiece, holding a picture from their honeymoon, is a testament to his craftsmanship. Jim's vision for the future is clear: a family of his own, a stable home, and the financial security to ensure his children never have to struggle. He's practical, but not without warmth, often surprising Monica with small acts of kindness, like leaving her favorite snack on her desk or planning a weekend picnic when work allows. He is a man deeply in love with his wife and committed to their life together. Yet, beneath this composed exterior lies a streak of decisiveness. While Jim may appear agreeable, he's no pushover. When pushed into a corner, he will act with the same precision and resolve he brings to his work. Monica, at 28, is the embodiment of effortless charm. With her naturally curly hair, slightly disheveled yet chic wardrobe, and an earthy aesthetic, she seems like someone who belongs in an indie film or a lifestyle magazine. An environmental biologist by training, she transitioned into a role on the local library board, a position she took up not long after moving to their suburban community. Monica's passion for her work is evident. She often speaks animatedly about climate change, conservation projects, and the library's plans for modernizing its systems. Where Jim is structured, Monica is spontaneous. She thrives in unplanned moments, whether it's deciding on a whim to redecorate their living room with secondhand finds or taking a different route during their evening walks just to explore. Her energy and zest for life drew Jim to her when they met, and it's what made their early relationship so electric. Friends often describe her as magnetic, someone who can walk into a room and command attention without trying. Yet, lately, Monica has seemed withdrawn, her spark dimmed by something Jim can't quite place. She has formed a close friendship with Sally, their divorced neighbor, who seems to have a subtle yet undeniable influence on Monica. Sally, known for her strong opinions and outgoing personality, has introduced Monica to a more social and independent lifestyle. While Jim sees Sally as a well-meaning neighbor, he sometimes wonders if she's encouraged Monica to embrace certain ideas or habits that feel foreign to their usual dynamic. Jim and Monica's love story began at a professional conference 3 years before their marriage. Both were speakers, Jim presenting on sustainable construction, Monica on environmental impact assessments. Their connection was immediate, a blend of professional respect and personal chemistry. Within months, they were inseparable, building a relationship that seemed equal parts passionate and practical. They were a team, tackling the challenges of early marriage with the same enthusiasm they brought to their careers. Now, 5 years into their marriage, life has settled into a predictable rhythm. They live in a modest but charming 3-bedroom house in the suburbs, complete with a backyard Jim meticulously maintains. Their evenings are often spent quietly, Jim reviewing project designs on his laptop, Monica curled up with a book or drafting plans for the library board. The occasional date night or weekend getaway adds variety, but their focus has been on building a future, financial stability, a solid home, and, recently, plans to start a family. Despite the stability, cracks have begun to form. Monica's new role on the library board has brought longer hours and a new circle of acquaintances. She's taken to spending more evenings out, citing meetings or events, and returning home late. Jim, ever trusting, initially chalked this up to her commitment to the community. But her increasing distance, the missed goodnight kisses, the avoidance of his questions, has begun to weigh on him. For Jim, these changes are subtle but unsettling. He's the kind of man who notices the little things, the faint smell of unfamiliar perfume on Monica's coat, the way her phone buzzes more frequently yet is always out of reach, the nights she claims exhaustion but seems restless in bed. While he tells himself it's probably stress, a small voice in the back of his mind whispers otherwise. Their financial situation, though stable, doesn't leave much room for indulgences. Jim has been diligently saving for their future, prioritizing Monica's comfort and the eventual addition of children to their lives. Monica, however, seems to have developed new tastes, more frequent shopping trips, an upgraded wardrobe, and a preference for dining out with friends rather than their usual quiet dinners at home. Jim notices, but doesn't comment, choosing instead to trust her judgment. The once unshakable bond between Jim and Monica has begun to show cracks, delicate but undeniable. Their home, once alive with shared jokes and effortless conversation, now feels heavier, as though an invisible weight presses down on both of them. Jim notices the subtle shifts first, the lingering silences during dinner, the way Monica's laughter seems more reserved, almost practiced. Her once spontaneous affection, playful hugs in the kitchen or kisses on his cheek while he worked, has dwindled, replaced by hurried goodbyes and distracted nods. Determined to bridge the growing distance, Jim tries to reignite their connection. He plans a surprise anniversary dinner at their favorite restaurant, carefully choosing a bottle of wine they shared on their honeymoon. Monica smiles at the gesture, but the warmth in her eyes is fleeting, as if she's already somewhere else. His suggestion of a weekend getaway to the mountains, a place they used to escape to when life felt overwhelming, is met with hesitant enthusiasm, quickly tempered by excuses about work commitments. Each of her reassurances feels like a gentle push away. "Everything's fine," she insists with a weary smile, citing fatigue from long hours or the demands of the library board. But Jim senses more than exhaustion. There's a wall forming, and he's unsure if it's meant to protect her or shut him out. Their marriage, once built on a foundation of mutual trust and shared dreams, now feels as though it's standing on uneven ground. For Jim, it's not just a matter of fixing what's broken, it's understanding the pieces he no longer recognizes. He is fueled by a love that refuses to yield, holding on to the life they've built with a quiet but unshakable determination. For Monica, the question is more complex. Is the life they've created still enough for her? Or has she already begun slipping into a world where Jim has no place? The distance between them is no longer measured in physical space, but in an emotional chasm that neither seems able to bridge. Jim first notices something unusual on a rainy Tuesday evening. Monica comes home later than expected, slipping quietly through the front door. He's already on the couch, flipping through the channels, but barely watching. "Hey," he calls out casually, expecting her usual cheerful response. Instead, Monica mutters a quick, "Hi," and heads straight to their bedroom. When Jim follows her, he's greeted by a faint but unfamiliar scent. It's not her usual lavender body lotion or the crisp citrus perfume she's worn for years. This is different, sharper, heavier, and entirely out of place. As she bends to remove her shoes, he notices something else, the dampness at the nape of her neck, as if she had just stepped out of a steamy room. "Did you get caught in the rain?" he asks. "No," she says, not meeting his eyes. "The library was just stuffy tonight." The explanation doesn't sit right with him, but he lets it go, not wanting to sound accusatory. Over the next few weeks, these oddities pile up. Monica's late-night meetings with the library board become more frequent, and her returns home always seem accompanied by something off. A faint trace of an unfamiliar cologne lingering on her blouse, a distracted demeanor, or the way she avoids his touch when he leans in for a kiss. Their physical intimacy, once a cornerstone of their relationship, dwindles to almost nothing. Whenever Jim suggests spending time together, Monica brushes it off with vague excuses about being too tired or stressed from her responsibilities at the board. One Saturday afternoon, Jim is tidying up the house while Monica runs errands. As he straightens out the clutter on the kitchen counter, a small, glossy card catches his eye. He picks it up, flipping it between his fingers. It's a business card belonging to Derek Matthews, the head librarian Monica mentioned once in passing. The card itself isn't incriminating. Derek's name and title are printed in clean, bold letters with the library's logo in the corner. But why is it here? Jim doesn't remember her mentioning any direct work with Derek. When Monica returns, Jim holds up the card casually. "Hey, I found this. Do you need it for something?" Monica's reaction is subtle, but telling. Her eyes dart to the card for a fraction of a second before she shrugs. "Oh, that's nothing. Derek asked me to help organize some of the upcoming events at the library. He probably just gave it to me for contact info." Jim tilts his head. "I didn't know you were working so closely with him." "It's not a big deal," she says lightly, taking the card from his hand and slipping it into her bag. "It's just part of the board responsibilities. We're trying to modernize the library, and he's overseeing the project." Her tone is casual, but her movements are just a little too deliberate, her smile a touch too forced. Jim doesn't push further, but the interaction plants a seed of doubt. Monica's explanation seems plausible enough, but something about the way she handled the question feels rehearsed. That night, Jim lies awake, staring at the ceiling as the steady rhythm of Monica's breathing fills the room. Sleep evades him. His mind loops endlessly, replaying their earlier conversation. Every word, every glance, every subtle shift in her tone feels significant now. The unfamiliar scents, the damp hair, the abrupt change in her demeanor. They hang in his thoughts like unsolved riddles. He can't shake the feeling that he's missing something, that the pieces of this puzzle don't quite fit. Jim knows himself well enough to recognize when his instincts are trying to tell him something. He's not impulsive by nature. His approach to problems has always been measured and deliberate. Confronting Monica outright feels premature, especially when he has no concrete evidence. Yet, the nagging unease in his chest refuses to be ignored. The following day, Jim begins observing her with a sharpened focus. When Monica leaves for another late meeting, he notes the time she exits with exacting precision. He glances out the window as her car pulls away, committing the direction to memory. Later, he flips through the calendar she keeps on the kitchen counter. The scheduled meetings align with what she's told him, but there are gaps. blocks of unaccounted time that unsettle him further. Subtle changes catch his eye. The way Monica now selects outfits for these meetings, just a bit more polished than usual, with accessories she once reserved for special occasions. Her phone buzzes frequently, and she's quick to flip it face down, as if guarding the screen from view. Jim notices her newfound habit of carrying her bag into the bedroom when she gets home, something she never used to do. Each detail feels small in isolation, but adds weight to his growing suspicions. One evening, while Monica showers, Jim's gaze falls on her bag, left unzipped on the dining room chair. A receipt peeks out, its printed edge barely visible. His heart races as he approaches, temptation warring with caution. He stops short, pulling back. Snooping feels wrong, a breach of the trust they once shared. Instead, he files the observation away, deciding to watch carefully, catalog each moment, and wait for a clearer picture. Each passing day strengthens Jim's resolve. His love for Monica runs deep, but the growing distance between them feels like an invisible wall he can't climb. He tells himself this is for their marriage, for clarity, for the truth he needs to understand. Yet, even as he tries to approach this with reason and patience, an uneasy certainty forms in his mind. Whatever lies ahead, it's bound to change everything. The next morning, while Monica is still asleep, Jim decides to take a step he never imagined he would. Her phone sits on the nightstand, its screen blank but tempting. He hesitates, guilt pooling in his chest, but his instincts push him forward. Picking up the device, he unlocks it, using the passcode he's known for years. The Messages app loads, but it's eerily empty. Every recent conversation is gone, leaving only generic notifications and automated reminders. Jim scrolls through her email app, but it too seems unusually clean. His pulse quickens. Monica has never been one to delete things, often letting her inbox pile up to hundreds of unread messages. This deliberate effort to wipe everything feels like confirmation that she's hiding something. Later that evening, after Monica falls asleep, Jim quietly moves to the home office. He boots up their shared computer and opens her email account. She hasn't logged out, and he thanks the stars for this small stroke of luck. His fingers tremble slightly as he clicks through the folders. In her sent folder, he stumbles upon a trail of correspondence that makes his stomach churn. The emails are formal at first, discussions about library board projects and event logistics. But a few exchanges with a sender named Derek Matthews take a more personal turn. Words like, "Can't wait to see you," and "the usual spot" appear in plain text. One email mentions a motel by name with a date and time attached. Jim's jaw tightens as he scrolls further, finding nothing explicitly incriminating but enough to deepen his suspicions. He forwards the emails to a private account and carefully logs out, making sure not to leave any trace of his actions. Still unsatisfied, Jim decides he needs irrefutable proof. The next day, he orders a small, discreet camera online and sets it up in the living room where Monica often places her bag. It's hidden among the books on a shelf, positioned to capture the room's activity. He tests it repeatedly, ensuring it's functioning perfectly, and waits. As the days pass, Jim's outward demeanor remains calm, but inside, he feels like a tightly wound spring. Every glance Monica throws his way feels like a test, every word she speaks laced with double meaning. He suppresses his emotions, maintaining a facade of normalcy to avoid alerting her. Monica, on the other hand, becomes increasingly distant. She's late more often now, offering vague explanations about extended meetings or sudden errands. When Jim casually brings up future plans, like repainting the nursery they've talked about for months, her responses are curt, her enthusiasm noticeably absent. One evening, as they sit at the dinner table, Jim brings up the idea of a weekend getaway. Monica stiffens slightly, her fork hovering midair. "That sounds nice," she says, but her voice is thin, and her eyes dart away. "Just the two of us." Jim presses gently, watching her reaction closely. "I'll check my schedule," she replies, her tone too neutral. It's another excuse, and they both know it. The distance between them is now palpable, a heavy silence that hangs over their once warm home. Jim feels like he's living with a stranger, and every interaction is laced with an unspoken tension that threatens to unravel him. Desperate for clarity, Jim decides to reach out to someone he trusts. On a quiet Sunday morning, he calls his father. They haven't spoken deeply in a while, but his dad has always been his rock, a source of wisdom and level-headed advice. After a few minutes of small talk, Jim finally opens up. "Dad," he begins, his voice heavy, "I think Monica's hiding something from me." There's a pause on the other end. "What kind of something?" his father asks cautiously. Jim hesitates, the words catching in his throat. "I don't know for sure. She's been different, distant. And I've found things, emails, missing messages, late nights. I can't make sense of it yet, but it doesn't feel right." His father exhales, the sound measured. "Have you talked to her about it?" "Not yet. I don't have enough to go on, and if I'm wrong..." Jim trails off, unwilling to finish the thought. His father's tone is steady, reassuring. "Listen, Jim. I know how much you love her, but don't jump to conclusions. If you accuse her without solid proof, it could backfire. Take your time. Watch, gather evidence, and think carefully before you act. Rushing into this won't help either of you." The advice grounds Jim, giving him a renewed sense of purpose. He thanks his father and hangs up, feeling slightly steadier, but no less determined. Over the next week, Jim dedicates himself to a careful, almost obsessive routine. Each time Monica leaves the house, he retrieves the hidden camera footage, scrutinizing every second as if it holds the key to unraveling the growing mystery. The videos reveal a pattern: Monica returning home later than she claims, her movements purposeful, yet marked by an odd tension. She places her bag on the dining chair with mechanical precision, reaching for her phone almost immediately. Her fingers move swiftly across the screen, typing messages that are erased just as quickly, leaving no trace behind. One evening, Jim notices a new detail. Monica retrieves a small black box from her bag. She holds it for a moment, her expression unreadable, before slipping it into a hidden compartment of the kitchen drawer. Later, when she's in the shower, Jim checks the drawer. The box is gone. The discovery leaves him shaken, the absence of answers more maddening than the presence of suspicions. Each piece of this growing puzzle tightens the knot in his chest. While no single action confirms his fears, the accumulating evidence paints an increasingly damning picture. Monica's secrecy is deliberate, and Jim knows he's on the verge of uncovering something he may not want to face. In the meantime, he plays his part flawlessly. At dinner, he listens attentively as Monica talks about her day, even as her stories are peppered with inconsistencies. When she mentions work events, he nods as if nothing is amiss. Every gesture, every word is calculated to avoid tipping her off. Inside, however, the tension is almost unbearable. Each day feels like walking a tightrope where one misstep could send everything crashing down. Yet, Jim remains steadfast, his resolve hardening with every passing moment. He keeps a meticulous log of every inconsistency, every detail that doesn't add up, like a detective assembling a case. The hours between Monica's departures and returns stretch endlessly, filled with anticipation and dread. Jim feels like a man waiting for a storm he cannot stop, the air thick with the promise of upheaval. And so, he waits, the weight of the unknown pressing down on him, even as the certainty of an inevitable revelation looms closer. The moment Jim had been both dreading and anticipating finally arrives late on a Thursday evening. The house is quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Monica had gone out earlier, claiming yet another late meeting at the library board. This time, Jim doesn't need to guess. He has the footage. After dinner, Jim retrieves the camera's memory card and loads it into his laptop. His heart pounds in his chest as the video begins to play. At first, the images are innocuous. Monica arriving home, her usual brisk and deliberate movements. But then, at around 10:15 p.m., there's a knock at the door. The footage captures her walking to open it, her expression tense but eager. Standing on the doorstep is Derek Matthews. The sight of him sends a chill through Jim. Derek steps inside without hesitation, and Monica closes the door behind him. They exchange a few words that the camera doesn't capture, and then she leads him into the living room. Their body language is unmistakable. The way Derek casually leans closer to her. How Monica seems both hesitant and complicit. The video confirms what Jim had feared for weeks. He watches as Derek places a hand on Monica's shoulder, and she doesn't pull away. They speak for a moment longer before Derek reaches into his jacket and hands her a folder. Monica glances at it briefly, then places it on the coffee table. Moments later, Derek pulls her into a brief but unmistakable embrace. Jim's stomach churns. He stops the video and sits back, staring at the screen as though it might change the reality before him. For a moment, he considers turning the computer off and pretending he never saw it, but he knows there's no going back now. Monica returns home shortly after midnight. Jim is waiting for her in the living room, the laptop still open on the coffee table. She seems startled to see him awake. "You're up late," she says, trying to sound casual as she sets her bag down. "We need to talk," Jim replies, his voice calm but firm. Monica pauses, her expression shifting to guarded suspicion. "What about?" Jim gestures to the laptop. "I think you already know." Her eyes dart to the screen, and she freezes. "What is this?" she asks, her voice trembling. "Why don't you tell me?" Jim counters, folding his arms. Monica's shoulders slump slightly as she steps closer to the table. When she sees the paused video, her face pales. For a moment, she doesn't speak, and Jim can see the wheels turning in her head, searching for a way out. "It's not what it looks like," she says, finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Jim's laugh is short and bitter. "Really? Because it looks like Derek Matthews is walking into my house and putting his hands on my wife." Monica flinches at his words. "Jim, please, let me explain." "Then explain," he interrupts, his tone sharper than he intended. "Explain the late nights, the deleted messages, the emails about motels. Explain why you've been lying to me." Her eyes fill with tears, and she sinks onto the edge of the couch. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she says, her voice cracking. "It was just, I don't know. I got caught up in something." Jim's chest tightens. "Caught up in what, Monica? Be specific." She takes a deep breath, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "Derek. He started paying attention to me, complimenting my ideas, asking for my input. He made me feel—" She hesitates, looking down at her hands. "He made you feel what?" Jim presses, his patience thinning. "Important," she says finally. "Like, I mattered." Jim exhales slowly, the weight of his words heavy in the air. "So what?" he asks, his voice thick with restrained anger. "That was enough for you? Enough to throw everything we've built away? To let him into our home, into our lives?" Monica's breath catches, and she shakes her head quickly, her voice rising in desperation. "It wasn't like that, Jim. It wasn't physical, not really. He kissed me once, but it didn't mean anything. I swear, I stopped it before it went any further. Jim stares at her, the anger in his chest battling with disbelief. The images from the video replay in his mind like a relentless loop. Derek's hand on her shoulder, the closeness of their bodies, the unmistakable ease between them. You expect me to believe that? His voice is low now, laced with a bitterness he's never felt before. Monica's tears spill freely as she clasps her hands tightly in her lap. It's the truth, she pleads, her voice cracking. I know I was stupid. I let things go too far, but it's over, Jim. It's been over for weeks. And the emails about motels? Jim's words are cold, each one cutting through the room like ice. Were those nothing, too? Monica falters, her lips parting as though she's about to speak, but no words come. The silence stretches between them, louder than any answer she could have given. Her hesitation is damning, and Jim feels his stomach twist. The pause is unbearable, and Jim finally breaks it. Don't lie to me, Monica. Not now. I deserve the truth. Monica takes a shuddering breath, her hands trembling. Derek wasn't just, interested in me personally, she begins, her voice barely above a whisper. He was using me. Jim's brows furrow, his anger momentarily giving way to confusion. Using you? For what? Monica swallows hard, her words coming faster now, as though she's desperate to get them out. He wanted influence on the board. He said he needed my support to push certain initiatives through, things he couldn't get approval for on his own. He made it sound like I was the key to everything. Jim leans back, his arms crossing tightly over his chest. And you believed him? He asks, his voice flat, though disbelief is clear in his tone. I didn't at first, Monica admits, her voice trembling with emotion. But he's persuasive. He knew exactly what to say, how to make me feel like my opinion mattered, like I was important. Her words tumble out in a rush, a mix of shame and frustration. I thought I was doing the right thing, Jim. I thought I was helping. Jim lets out a sharp laugh, devoid of humor. Helping who? He asks, his tone cutting. Him? Yourself? Because it sure as hell wasn't me. Monica flinches at his words, her shoulders slumping as though the weight of her actions is finally settling on her. She doesn't try to defend herself, doesn't offer another excuse. Instead, she sits silently, her hands gripping the edge of the couch as if holding on for stability. For a long moment, the only sound in the room is the faint hum of the heater. Jim's mind races, his emotions a chaotic tangle of anger, betrayal, and something he doesn't want to admit might be pity. The woman sitting across from him, the woman he thought he knew so well, seems like a stranger now. Why didn't you tell me? Jim finally asks, his voice quieter but no less intense. Monica looks up at him, her eyes red and glassy. Because I was ashamed, she says, her voice trembling. I didn't want you to know how stupid I'd been. I thought I could fix it before you found out. Jim shakes his head slowly, the disbelief etched into his features. Fix it? By letting him manipulate you? By sneaking around behind my back? Monica opens her mouth to respond but quickly closes it again. Her silence is deafening, an admission in itself. The weight of her words and her omissions presses down on Jim. His anger remains, but beneath it, a deeper, more painful realization begins to take root. The foundation of their marriage, built on trust and partnership, has been irreparably shaken. As they sit in silence, the distance between them feels insurmountable. Jim's gaze lingers on Monica, searching for the woman he once knew, the woman he thought he could trust with anything. But all he sees now is a stranger, one who made choices he can't begin to understand. The truth is out, and with it comes the undeniable reality that their lives, their marriage, will never be the same. The morning after their explosive confrontation, Jim sits alone at the kitchen table. The house feels oppressively quiet, as though the walls themselves are holding their breath. Monica had left early for work, leaving behind an air of tension and unspoken words. Jim stares blankly at his coffee mug, the weight of the night's revelations pressing down on him. He knows what he has to do. There's no salvaging what's left of their marriage, not after the lies, the betrayal, and the irrevocable loss of trust. With a deep breath, he picks up his phone and dials the number of an old college friend, Greg, who now works as a family attorney. Greg listens patiently as Jim outlines the situation, his voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "You've got everything you need," Greg says at last, his tone professional but empathetic. "The evidence is clear, and the court won't look kindly on what she's done. Let's meet tomorrow to start the paperwork." Jim agrees, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. He spends the rest of the day gathering financial documents, reviewing their shared accounts, and noting which assets belong to whom. By evening, he's drafted a clear ultimatum. Monica will need to leave the house once the divorce is filed. When Monica returns that evening, she finds Jim waiting in the living room. The folder of evidence sits on the coffee table between them. She hesitates at the doorway, her expression guarded. "Sit down," Jim says, his voice calm but firm. Monica obeys, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Jim, He raises a hand to stop her. "I've made my decision," he says. "This marriage is over. I'm filing for divorce." Her face crumples, and tears well up in her eyes. "Jim, please." "No," he interrupts, his tone sharper. "You don't get to plead your case anymore. You made your choices, and now you'll face the consequences." He slides a piece of paper across the table, a list of conditions. "I've spoken to an attorney. You'll be hearing from him soon. In the meantime, you need to pack your things and move out. This is my home now." Monica stares at the paper, her tears falling silently. She looks up at Jim, searching for any sign of the man who once loved her. But his expression is resolute, and she knows there's no changing his mind. The next morning, Jim sits at his desk, the folder of evidence spread before him. Each piece, screenshots of Monica's emails with Derek, timestamps from the incriminating footage, feels like a weapon, not wielded out of revenge, but out of necessity. He takes a deep breath and opens his laptop, crafting an email with precise language, each word chosen to leave no room for misinterpretation. The email reads, "To whom it may concern. As a concerned member of this community, I feel it is my responsibility to bring to your attention a matter of serious ethical misconduct within your organization. The attached documents and video evidence reveal inappropriate behavior involving Derek Matthews and Monica, a member of your board. I trust the board will act swiftly and appropriately to address this issue and maintain the integrity of your institution." Jim attaches the files, ensuring everything is in order. His finger hovers over the send button, a moment of hesitation flickering through him. Once this email is sent, there's no turning back. The implications will ripple far beyond Derek and Monica, touching reputations, careers, and perhaps the broader community. With a steadying breath, Jim clicks send. The email disappears into the void, leaving him alone with the sound of his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Relief and anxiety mingle as he leans back in his chair, knowing he has taken a step he can't undo. The first signs of fallout come within 48 hours. The library board schedules an emergency meeting, its urgency clear from the stern language in the announcement email. Derek Matthews, blindsided by the accusations, is summoned to address the evidence presented against him. During the meeting, Derek attempts to deflect. He claims the emails were misinterpreted, the visits to Jim's home purely professional. But the video footage tells a different story, leaving little room for plausible deniability. When the board presses him on the inappropriate use of his position to manipulate Monica, his composure crumbles. By the meeting's end, the decision is unanimous. Derek is forced to resign, effective immediately. His polished reputation is shattered, the whispers of scandal spreading through the community like wildfire. Monica isn't spared from the fallout either. Though the board stops short of formally removing her, her credibility is irreparably damaged. Colleagues who once greeted her warmly now offer only strained smiles or avoid her altogether. Meetings that were once collaborative become awkward and tense, with veiled comments hinting at her involvement in the scandal. At home, Monica begins to withdraw further. The weight of public scrutiny, combined with her fractured marriage, leaves her isolated and adrift. She avoids community events, no longer able to meet the eyes of neighbors who have undoubtedly heard the rumors. For Jim, the fallout is both a relief and a heavy burden. While he takes no joy in Monica's humiliation or Derek's downfall, there's a sense of justice in knowing their actions didn't go unchecked. Yet the process of rebuilding feels daunting. He finalizes the divorce paperwork with his attorney, ensuring that his financial future is protected. Assets are divided cleanly, with Jim retaining the house. With Monica gone, he begins the slow work of reclaiming the space. He moves her belongings into storage, rearranges furniture, and repaints the walls, physical changes that mirror his emotional need to move forward. Jim pours himself into his work, finding solace in its structure and purpose. In his free time, he reconnects with old friends and picks up hobbies he had set aside during his marriage. Each small act, grabbing coffee with a coworker, taking a weekend hiking trip, feels like a step toward rediscovering who he is outside the shadow of betrayal. Though the scars of the ordeal remain, Jim feels a growing sense of clarity. The storm has passed, and the air, though still heavy, carries the faint promise of something new. For the first time in months, Jim allows himself to hope, not for what was lost, but for what lies ahead. The weeks following Monica's departure bring a sense of quiet Jim hadn't realized he craved. At first, the silence in the house feels oppressive, each creak of the floorboards a reminder of the life they once shared. But as time goes on, the stillness begins to feel like a balm, a space to breathe and rebuild. Jim throws himself into work, taking on a challenging project that promises to test every skill he's honed as an engineer. The firm has been contracted to design an ambitious urban renewal project, a sprawling park complex with sustainable features and intricate water systems. Jim's role involves coordinating with architects, environmental consultants, and city planners, a web of moving parts that demands his full attention. Late one evening, as Jim pores over blueprints in his home office, he feels something he hasn't in months: purpose. The lines and measurements on the page represent not just a project, but a future he's beginning to see for himself. For the first time, he feels excited about what's ahead. Monica moves in with Sally, who welcomes her with open arms and little judgment. Sally's small house is cluttered but warm, a stark contrast to the orderly home Monica shared with Jim. It's a temporary arrangement, but Monica finds herself staying longer than expected. The house is a refuge from the whispers and side-eyes she faces in the community, a place where she can begin to confront the consequences of her actions. One evening, as the two women sit on the porch with glasses of wine, Sally finally broaches the subject that's been hanging between them. "So, she says, carefully. Do you regret it? Monica stares into her glass, swirling the liquid absent-mindedly. Every day, she admits. I thought I was doing something for myself, something I needed. But all I did was ruin the one thing I could count on. Sally nods, but says nothing, sensing that Monica needs to speak her truth aloud. I hurt him, Monica continues, her voice trembling. And for what? Attention? Validation? None of it matters now. He was a good man, and I let him go. Though Sally offers her support, Monica knows the path to redemption isn't one anyone can guide her through. It's a road she must walk alone, and the weight of her mistakes makes every step feel heavier. As the months stretch on, Jim gradually pieces together a life he can call his own again. At first, the process feels slow, even painful. The house, now absent of Monica's presence, seems larger, quieter, a hollow version of what it once was. Yet, Jim doesn't let this emptiness consume him. Instead, he leans into it, seeing the silence as an opportunity to rebuild. He starts small. The living room, once a shared space filled with compromises in design, becomes his personal project. The gray sofa Monica picked out is replaced with a deep blue one that Jim finds calming. The art on the walls shifts from bland, abstract prints to photographs from his travels before marriage. Each change feels like a reclamation, a statement that this space is now entirely his. Outside the home, Jim pushes himself to reconnect with the people he'd unintentionally distanced himself from. Friends he hadn't seen in years are surprised to hear from him, but they welcome him back warmly. Friday nights at the local bar become a tradition again, where Jim joins old college buddies for beers and easy banter. They laugh about the past, tease him about his new fitness regimen, and remind him of the camaraderie he'd missed. Swimming, once an integral part of his routine, becomes a lifeline. Jim finds solace in the rhythmic motion of cutting through the water, the cool embrace of the pool washing away lingering resentment and self-doubt. Each lap feels like a fresh start, a physical manifestation of the emotional work he's doing to rebuild his confidence. By the time he steps out of the pool, droplets cascading down his face, he feels lighter, not just in body, but in spirit. One Saturday morning, Jim finds himself at a bustling community event, held in a sun-drenched park near the city's center. His firm's urban renewal project has drawn significant interest, and Jim has been tasked with manning a booth to field questions and showcase the design plans. The day is busy, a whirlwind of conversations with curious residents, environmental advocates, and local officials. Jim thrives in the energy, his passion for the project shining through as he explains the sustainable water features and shaded seating areas designed to transform the space into a community haven. Midway through the event, as the crowd shifts and ebbs, Jim's attention is caught by a woman standing near the informational booth. She's gesturing animatedly while speaking to one of the architects, her enthusiasm palpable even from a distance. Her sunlit hair falls in loose waves around her shoulders, and her smile radiates warmth. Later, as the crowd begins to thin, the woman makes her way over to Jim's station. She looks at the plans laid out on the table, her gaze lingering appreciatively. "This project is incredible," she says, her voice genuine. "You must be proud to be part of something like this." Jim smiles, feeling an unfamiliar but welcome ease in her presence. "I am," he replies. "It's been a challenge, but seeing it come together makes it all worth it." She introduces herself as Claire, a landscape designer who recently relocated to the area. Their conversation flows effortlessly, from technical details about the project to light-hearted exchanges about the local coffee scene. Claire's insights into the park's green spaces are thoughtful, her passion for her work evident. As she walks away, Jim feels a subtle shift within himself. It's not love at first sight, not even a spark of immediate attraction. It's something quieter, a realization that he's capable of enjoying someone's company again without the weight of the past pulling him down. Later that evening, Jim sits on his back porch, nursing a glass of iced tea as the sun dips below the horizon. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of freshly cut grass and blooming flowers. The walls of his house, once oppressive reminders of betrayal, now feel like blank canvases, ready to hold new memories. He reflects on the day, on Claire's easy laughter and the way her excitement about the project mirrored his own. It wasn't a momentous encounter, but it felt meaningful in its simplicity, a glimpse of what life could be like moving forward. The pain of what happened with Monica hasn't vanished. It lingers like a shadow, present but not overpowering. Jim knows that healing isn't linear, that some days will be harder than others. But for now, the bitterness no longer defines him. It's a scar, visible and permanent, but it no longer bleeds. As the breeze rustles through the trees, Jim allows himself to imagine the possibilities ahead. Whether or not Claire becomes part of his future, he knows he's ready to embrace what comes next. Trust and sincerity will guide him, both in the relationships he builds and the life he continues to craft for himself. For the first time in a long while, Jim feels at peace. And for now, that's more than enough.